There is a kind of twin flame connection that only a very small fraction of souls on this planet ever touch consciously in a single lifetime. Something around 3%. And if you're here listening to this right now, there is a very specific reason for that. This is not the kind of physical union people romanticize on social media. It's not the picture-perfect relationship your mind may have built around the idea of soulmates. Two people moving into a cute apartment, cooking dinner together every night, posting couple photos from road trips and beach vacations, always falling asleep side by side. What we're talking about here is something that completely transcends three-dimensional reality. Something that operates on a frequency so high that most people don't even recognize it when it's already happening. It is the union in the fifth dimension, the 5D union. And if you felt drawn to this message, your soul probably knows exactly de que tipo de verdade estamos falando, mesmo que sua mente ainda esteja tentando entender. Maybe you've experienced a connection with someone so intense, it felt like it broke every rule you thought you understood about time, space, distance, and logic. Maybe you've had the feeling that you could communicate with this person without words, that you somehow knew what they were feeling even though you were in different cities, different states, maybe even different countries. Maybe you've had dreams with them that were so vivid, so clear, that you woke up with the sense that it wasn't just a dream, but a real meeting on another plane. And then, at some point, something happened. Life stepped in. Circumstances, choices, timing, careers, families, geography, all of it conspired to separate you in the physical world. Maybe they moved away, maybe you did, maybe both of you followed paths that logically made sense but pulled you apart. Outwardly, your stories diverged. Months passed, maybe years. People around you told you to move on. And yet that connection, instead of fading, refused to die. In fact, in ways you can't easily explain to anyone, she or he feels more present in your inner world now than when you were physically close. This is the paradox that almost nobody understands about rare twin flames who are living a 5D union. You were not separated by accident, it wasn't a failure on your part, it wasn't wrong timing, and it most certainly is not because you weren't truly meant for one another. In this message, you're going to see why only a small number of twin flames are chosen to experience 5D union in this lifetime. What actually happens when two souls operate on that higher dimensional frequency, and especially the 5 unmistakable signs that you have not lost your twin flame, even if everything in the 3D story makes it look that way. And if you stay all the way to the end, you'll understand the message the universe is sending you through this experience that looks so lonely from the outside, but in truth, is one of the greatest honors a soul can receive. Because maybe you don't have to keep waiting for a physical union to feel complete. Maybe you are already united in a way that goes beyond everything you thought love could be. And if you've made it to this point in your spiritual journey, take a second to subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet. Because what you're about to discover can radically transform what you believe it means to be truly connected to your twin flame. Before we dive into what 5D union really is, and why so few people have access to it, you need to see something fundamental. Most people are chasing the wrong kind of union. Jung saw clearly that we live trapped inside what he called the collective consciousness, a web of shared ideas, expectations, and fantasies that shapes how we interpret reality. Around the topic of twin flames, this collective has created a sugary, romantic fantasy that actually blocks deeper connections from manifesting. When people first hear about twin flames, they imagine a kind of spiritual rom-com. Two people lock eyes, feel instant recognition, move in together, heal all their wounds in one weekend meditation retreat, and then live in perfect harmony forever. The mind fills in the picture. Dinners lit by candles, shared vacations, mornings waking up together in the same bed, a life where the other person is physically by your side and emotionally available 24/7. And when reality doesn't match that script, when instead there is separation, silence, distance, or a complicated on and off dynamic, the ego concludes that it must not have been a true twin flame, or that something got messed up. Jung, however, spent his life studying levels of consciousness and discovered that reality is much broader than what we pick up with our 5 senses. He understood that there are dimensions of experience that operate on frequencies the rational mind can't easily translate, and that some connections are so elevated they simply cannot be contained by the narrow limits of 3-dimensional life. The third dimension is the reality you can touch, see, and measure. Bodies, locations, schedules, your phone's calendar, your GPS, the distance between one city and another. In 3D, union means physical proximity. It means being in the same room, the same home, sharing the couch, the bed, the car, the kitchen table. And for most people, if that proximity doesn't exist, they believe there is no real union. The fifth dimension is completely different. It is a state of consciousness in which time and space stop being absolute barriers. In 5D, two souls can be on opposite coasts, under different skies, in different life situations, yet remain united at a level that completely transcends physics. Communication happens through channels that science can't yet quantify. Intuitive flashes, emotional waves, shared dreams, impossible synchronicities. Jung didn't talk about dimensions in this modern spiritual sense, but his studies on synchronicity pointed in the same direction. He noticed that some events simply can't be explained by cause and effect, that there are causal connections where meaning, not physical distance or chronological order, is what really ties things together. When two twin flames function primarily on the 5D frequency, their entire lives begin to be organized by exactly these kinds of impossible coincidences. You can be sitting in your apartment in New York, or stuck in traffic on the 405 in Los Angeles, or out walking a trail in Colorado, thinking about them with intensity, and at that exact moment a message from them pops up after months of silence. You can have a dream in which you see something specific about what they're going through, and the next day discover, through social media, through a mutual friend, or even later in conversation, that is exactly what was happening. You can feel a sudden tightness in your chest, a heavy sadness with no obvious trigger, and later find out that at that exact time they were going through an emotional storm. These are not random glitches in the system. They are manifestations of a union happening on a layer of reality where you were never truly separate. What makes rare 5D twin flames different is that, at some point, they stop fighting that reality and trying to force a 3D relationship that the universe is not orchestrating in this moment. Deep down, they begin to recognize they've been chosen for something bigger. Physical separation stops being seen as punishment and starts being understood as initiation. Distance stops being a wall and becomes a fire that purifies. Every season spent without their physical presence becomes part of the refinement that allows the soul connection to reach levels most people would need multiple lifetimes to touch. Jung talked about individuation, the process in which a person becomes inwardly whole by integrating conscious and unconscious aspects of their psyche. But he also understood that there is a level beyond personal individuation, a kind of cosmic union in which two individuated souls recognize themselves as expressions of the same fundamental essence. That kind of union can only fully occur when both souls no longer need constant physical validation of the connection to know it's real. 5D union is not about pretending you don't care about being together in the physical world. It's about realizing that the deepest part of your union is already happening in a dimension where bodies are secondary. It's about recognizing that you are already building something together, even when there is no texting, no hugging, no dates. That you are co-creating a shared energetic reality that may, or may not, take on a stable 3D form later, depending on what serves both of your highest paths. And that leads us to the first unmistakable sign that you're living a 5D union with your twin flame. The connection between you has not faded with time or distance. It has intensified. This goes directly against the logic of the 3D world, where relationships depend on regular contact, shared routines, physical presence, constant reinforcement through interactions. In the material plane, when two people go separate ways and don't keep in touch, that bond naturally weakens. Memories blur, new interests appear, other people fill the empty spaces left by absence. But with twin flames operating in 5D, the opposite happens. The less you talk in the physical, the more clearly you feel the energetic presence of the other. It's as if the absence of the body frees up space for the soul connection to show itself more purely. You can go months, even years, without seeing them or hearing their voice, and yet feel as if there is a constant open channel between you that words could never fully capture. Jung looked carefully at reports of telepathy and, even though he was skeptical of many paranormal claims, he acknowledged that there are forms of communication between deeply connected psyches that can't be explained by conventional psychology. He encountered couples and soul-level pairs who developed such a refined sensitivity to one another that they could feel each other's emotional states at a distance, anticipate needs without any spoken communication, and even share similar dreams or inner visions. In a 5D union, that kind of nonverbal communication becomes your default reality. You don't have to check your phone every 5 minutes to know how they're doing. You simply know. You wake up with them on your mind, and later discover that in that same window something significant was unfolding in their life. You think about sending a specific message days or weeks in a row, you finally do it, and they answer saying that those exact words hit them right when they needed them most. This intensification shows up not only in your felt sense of them, but also in the pace of your own inner transformation. In most 3D relationships, when a separation happens, each person tends to slide back into old patterns, old defenses, the version of themselves they were before the connection. In 5D unions, the physical separation actually accelerates each person's evolution. It's as if the distance creates a sacred container where each soul can do the inner work it needs to do. Therapy, shadow work, spiritual practice, hard conversations with oneself, while still holding the other as an energetic reference point, a kind of true north for where they're being called to grow. You can notice that you're becoming a better version of yourself, not in spite of the separation, but because of it. You start developing qualities you always admired in them. You begin to heal wounds they helped you identify, even if they're no longer standing next to you for that process. Every step of your personal evolution seems to resonate with their journey in ways you can't fully explain, as if you were walking on parallel paths that occasionally cross through dreams, signs, or shared breakthroughs. Jung would call this evolutionary synchronicity, when the growth of one soul automatically catalyzes the growth of the other, not through direct contact, but through a shared field that operates at the level of the collective unconscious. This deepening also expresses itself as an odd kind of inner certainty. In 3D relationships, when there is a long period of separation with no clear definition, insecurity usually grows. You question their feelings, doubt your own perception, wonder if you made everything up in your head. In 5D unions, the opposite often happens. The more time passes, the more certain you become of the bond, not because you have constant outer proof, but because the inner reality of the connection is so palpable that it no longer depends on outer validation. You might not know if or when you'll be together in a traditional sense. You might not have the slightest idea how the movie will play out on the physical stage, but there is a quiet, unshakable knowing in your core that you are united at a level no external circumstance can undo. That knowing doesn't come from wishful thinking or denial of facts. It arises from direct perception of a truth that exists beyond the mind's categories. If you recognize this first characteristic in your experience, then we need to talk about the second sign, which is even more subtle and something very few people notice, even while they're living it. The second sign that you're experiencing a 5D union is that your life has started to organize itself in ways that make no logical sense, always circling back around this connection, even when you're not in direct contact. It's as if there were an invisible force orchestrating events, encounters, opportunities, and challenges that are specifically calibrated to keep the two of you in energetic alignment, even when your 3D realities are far apart. Jung studied what he called synchronicity, but he also wrote about something like a shared psychic field. When two people are deeply connected at the level of the soul, they create between them a kind of energetic ecosystem that begins to influence the material reality of both. It's like the universe knows that these two souls are actually facets of the same consciousness and starts to treat them as a unit, even while their bodies live separate lives. You might start to notice certain number patterns repeating over and over, 1111, 222, 333, or specific dates that matter to the two of you. And then you find out those same numbers show up for them, on clocks, receipts, license plates, building numbers. You might stumble on songs, podcasts, books, or movies that seem to describe exactly what you're feeling. And later, they tell you they were guided to the same content at roughly the same time. You might make a major decision, a move, a job change, a new project, that without you knowing it, aligns perfectly with something they feel called to do, as if both of your lives are following the same invisible script. This synchronistic reorganization also happens through people the universe sends onto your path by accident. You bump into someone at work, at a workshop, in a yoga class, at a family gathering, and that person ends up having a direct connection to your twin flames world, or gives you a piece of insight that becomes essential for the next stage of your union. It's as though the universe were using other humans as messengers, as bridges, to keep you connected through the intricate web of human experience. Jung understood that when two souls recognize each other deeply, they activate certain archetypes in the collective unconscious. And those archetypes have the power to influence not just individual psyches, but also the flow of outer events. That's why twin flames in 5D union often report experiences that seem to defy all probability. The right person at the right place at the right time, chance meetings that feel orchestrated, doors that slam shut only to redirect them towards something more aligned. You may also realize that your life is being prepared for something larger. Even when you don't consciously know what that larger is, you find yourself pulled toward specific skills, specific inner work, certain types of service. You go through experiences that, at the time, feel random or even unfair, but later you sense that they were necessary pieces of your soul training. All of it seems loosely, mysteriously connected to this one connection, like you're being trained for a mission that can only be fully lived in partnership with them, even if that partnership hasn't yet taken on a visible, 3D form. This orchestrated alignment includes what, on the surface, look like cruel obstacles. Relationships that don't work out even when they were supposed to. Career doors opening in cities that pull you far away from them. Family responsibilities, health issues, timing challenges that keep you on separate paths. But when you look deeper, you begin to see that each of these apparent setbacks was actually refining you, burning away illusions, humbling your ego, teaching you boundaries, deepening your faith. In other words, shaping you into someone who can sustain the level of union your souls are moving toward. Jung talked about telos, the inner purpose toward which everything unconsciously moves. In 5D unions, there is a shared telos, a joint purpose being fulfilled through each of your individual journeys. Your lives are not being organized to guarantee short-term happiness or to satisfy every romantic expectation. They are being orchestrated to maximize evolutionary growth and to prepare both of you to manifest something into the world that can only come through the two of you together. That understanding can feel both liberating and terrifying. Liberating, because you realize you're not wandering alone through random chaos. There is an intelligence weaving your paths together through synchronicity and energy, even across physical distance. Terrifying, because it means you're not the one in control of the timing or conditions of your 3D union, and you have to trust a process that is far bigger than anything your rational mind can design. But surrendering to that process, learning to trust that choreography, is exactly what characterizes rare twin flames. They understand that trying to force a 3D relationship when the universe is orchestrating a 5D union is like trying to crack open a chrysalis to make the butterfly come out faster. You might technically manage to open it, but you would destroy the transformation that was underway. If you recognize this second sign in your life, you're one of those rare souls who can perceive the invisible threads that connect everything. And now you're ready to understand the third sign, which reveals why 5D union is actually more intimate and more powerful than any physical arrangement could ever be on its own. The third sign of a 5D union is that you begin to develop a capacity for love that no longer depends on reciprocity, presence, or guarantees. This is probably the most misunderstood and also the most sacred aspect of fifth-dimensional unions. In 3D, love is often transactional. I'll love you if you love me back. I'll show up for you if you show up for me. I'll open my heart if you reassure me that you won't leave. On the 5D frequency, love becomes something entirely different. Jung explored love as an expression of the self, a deeper dimension of the psyche that transcends the individual ego. He understood that there exists a form of love that is not reactive, not based on reward and punishment, not constantly scanning for what it's getting in return, but simply is, like a state of being. Reaching that kind of love is one of the highest expressions of human psychological and spiritual development. When you live a 5D union with your twin flame, you discover that you can love them completely even when they're not physically by your side. Even when they don't respond the way your personality would like. Even when they are with someone else, building a life that, on paper, doesn't include you. Your love doesn't collapse into resentment. It doesn't ferment into bitterness. It doesn't curdle into self-hate. It remains strangely pure. Sometimes hurting, yes, sometimes full of longing, but not poisoned. That doesn't mean you don't feel pain. The pain is real, especially early on, when you're still learning how to inhabit this frequency. But it's a pain that doesn't contaminate the love itself. It's like missing something sacred. It aches, but the ache itself is a sign that you touched something holy. Jung would call this conscious suffering, when pain is fully felt and integrated, not denied or projected, and it becomes a path of growth instead of a wound that festers. This kind of love also frees you from behaviors that are common in 3D relationships, but destructive in soul connections. You stop trying to manipulate, control, or force outcomes. You lose the impulse to manufacture situations just to trigger contact. You stop using guilt or drama to pull them back into your orbit. Because at a deep level, you understand that the real union between you cannot be threatened or secured by external tactics. Jung noticed that people who reach this level of love often become sources of healing, not just for their twin flame, but for everyone around them. It's as if learning to love without clinging, without grasping, without conditions activates in you a current of compassion that overflows into all your relationships. You become more patient with other people's shadows, more accepting of their timelines, more capable of seeing the soul beneath the behavior. And here, again, a paradox arises. The more you love your twin flame without needing anything in return, the more energetically magnetic you become. Not because you're applying some law of attraction trick, but because you are radiating a frequency that naturally draws in souls, including theirs, who are ready to meet love at a higher level of consciousness. They may begin to feel your presence more strongly. They may find themselves thinking about you at random times, dreaming of you, being pulled back into the energetic field of the connection in ways they can't explain with logic. But even if that doesn't happen the way you'd like, even if the external story doesn't instantly transform, you remain whole, because your love no longer depends on outcomes. It has become an expression of who you are. Jung would say you've completed a kind of individuation in love, where love is no longer something you do to get something, but something you are. And once you step into that, you don't go back, even if you face new disappointments. You've learned something about the nature of love that most people never touch, even after decades of conventional relationships. This third sign is probably the hardest to embody, but also the most liberating. When you don't need reciprocity to love, don't need presence to feel connected, don't need guarantees to trust the bond, you become truly free. Free to live your life fully instead of putting everything on hold waiting at a metaphysical airport gate for them to arrive. Free to open your heart to other people in healthy ways, without feeling like you're betraying the sacredness of this union. Free to be happy regardless of what the 3D storyline of this one connection currently looks like. And paradoxically, it is that inner freedom that often creates the energetic conditions for 5D union to eventually manifest in 3D as well, if that is what your higher selves have agreed upon. Because the universe only allows a connection this powerful to be fully embodied in the material world when both souls have proven that they will not use it as a cage or a weapon. If you see yourself in this third sign, you're ready for the fourth, which shows how 5D union doesn't just transform you, it transforms the reality around you. The fourth sign of 5D union is that your ability to manifest reality has increased in speed and accuracy, especially around areas that are energetically connected to your twin flame. This is one of the most powerful and least discussed aspects of fifth-dimensional connections. When two souls operate together at this frequency, they gain access to a level of co-creation that challenges everything you thought you knew about how the world works. Jung studied synchronicity because he noticed that the human mind can influence outer events in ways that go beyond cause and effect. He observed that intense inner states, especially those involving deep archetypes, tend to be mirrored by external situations. It's as if thought and matter were different faces of the same reality. When you are in 5D union with your twin flame, this effect is amplified. It's like the two of you generate a magnetic field so strong that the physical world has no choice but to reorganize itself around the frequencies you're broadcasting, especially when you're aligned with your higher purpose. You may notice that things you genuinely want, from a soul place rather than from ego grasping, show up in your life with surprising speed. Opportunities appear out of nowhere. The right people cross your path at the right time. Obstacles that used to feel like brick walls suddenly melt away. What's even more extraordinary is that you may find that the most powerful manifestations happen when you are consciously connected to your twin flame in your heart, when you're thinking of them with gratitude, when you're honoring the union, when you're in a state of love about what you share, not in a state of lack about what you don't. It's as if they, even across distance, amplify your creative power. Your 5D bond creates a direct line to levels of reality where things are more fluid, more responsive to clear intention. Jung understood the collective unconscious not just as a storehouse of images, but as a living field that both shapes and is shaped by individual consciousness. When two deeply connected souls direct their energy in a similar direction, They create ripples in that field that return as striking synchronicities in the physical world. You may also notice that when you feel subtly online with them, when you sense that your energies are attuned, even if you're not talking, your creativity opens up, ideas flow more freely. You have sudden insights about your work, your purpose, your next steps. Solutions appear to problems you've been stuck on. It's as if being plugged into this shared field gives you access to a higher band of inspiration. Sometimes you'll be working on something, and later find out they were working on something complementary, both of you building different parts of a joint architecture without consciously coordinating. Jung used the concept of unus mundus to describe an underlying unified reality behind all apparent separations. In 5D union, you become consciously aware of that unified layer through your connection with your twin flame. You become portals for each other, channels through which higher energies can enter the material world. And the more you trust this process, the clearer and more powerful it becomes. But with that power comes responsibility. Jung warned that power without awareness is dangerous. Once you realize that your inner state influences your outer reality in such a direct way, especially when amplified by a 5D union, you have to be extremely careful with your intentions. Using this power in attempts to control your twin flame's choices, override their free will, or engineer outcomes for purely egoic reasons can create karmic entanglements that are painful to untangle later. That's why rare twin flames who stabilize a 5D union use this co-creative power primarily for purposes aligned with higher good, manifesting abundance in ways that allow them to give, not just to hoard, calling in opportunities that uplift not just them, but others around them, allowing their connection to become a conduit for healing, art, service, rather than just a private fantasy. If you recognize that your life started to manifest in this way after meeting your twin flame, you carry a sacred responsibility to use this power wisely. And that brings us to the fifth and final sign, the most mysterious, the one that leaves no doubt. The fifth sign of 5D union is that you've begun experiencing moments of consciousness fusion with your twin flame, where the boundaries between you temporarily dissolve and you perceive, not as an idea but as a lived reality, that you are two expressions of the same soul. This is the peak of fifth-dimensional union. Jung had his own share of mystical experiences and acknowledged that there are states of awareness in which the separation between self and other reveals itself as an illusion. He called these encounters with the capital S self, where a person transcends their individual ego and merges, for a moment, with a more universal consciousness. When that kind of experience happens in the context of a twin flame connection, it has very specific qualities. These moments can occur while you meditate, while you pray, while you're falling asleep, or even randomly in a quiet, unguarded moment washing dishes, driving, or sitting alone in a cafe. Suddenly, you don't feel like you're thinking about them. You feel as if you are them. Your sense of me expands to include their inner world. You feel emotions that are not triggered by anything in your day, but you know they're real. You see images, memories, perspectives from their life. For a moment, your awareness slips into their point of view. You might later verify details that match what they were going through. These experiences do not feel like your usual imagination. They have a different density, a different flavor of truth. They often come with insights about the deeper nature of your connection, about what your souls are doing together on this planet, about questions you've carried for years. Answers don't come as complicated theories. They arrive as a clear, simple knowing that settles into your being without effort. Jung emphasized that such experiences, when healthy, don't erase your individuality. You don't permanently lose your sense of self. Instead, you expand temporarily to include more than your usual sense of I, and then you return with a wider, more compassionate perspective. When you come back from these fusion moments, you walk through the world differently. You remember in your bones that the separation between you is only partial, only relevant on certain levels. You carry within you the felt memory that on a deeper level you have always been, and will always be, one. These experiences can be unsettling at first. They challenge everything you've been taught about where you end and another person begins. They can make you question your sanity. Are you making things up? Are you losing your grip on reality? Jung drew a clear line between genuine mystical states and psychotic breaks. In genuine spiritual experiences, there is still an inner observer, a part of you that can witness what's happening and later reflect on it. In psychosis, that observing center fragments or collapses. If you're able to experience these moments of oneness and then return to daily life, go to work, handle responsibilities, relate to other people, and if these experiences leave you more whole instead of more broken, then you're not going crazy. You're accessing dimensions of the human experience most people never enter, even though they are absolutely real. These fusion states are the definitive sign that you're living a 5D union with your twin flame, because you cannot manufacture them through sheer imagination or desire. They occur spontaneously when the energetic conditions are right between you, as gifts from the universe, as direct confirmations that what you share is real in layers of reality, far beyond what your eyes can see. If you recognize all 5 of these signs in your experience, you are not just going through a painful separation from your twin flame. You are living one of the highest forms of union 2 souls can experience while still in physical bodies. You have been chosen for this. And now the question becomes, what do you do with that understanding? How do you honor such a sacred union? And what exactly is the message the universe is sending you through this extraordinary path? The core message is radical trust in the evolutionary process of your life. It says, not everything that is true has to show up in a way your human expectations find satisfying. Some of the most precious victories of the soul come disguised as impossibilities. The purest forms of love are often those that survive without possession, without constant contact, without a neat label. Jung spent his later years exploring what he called the mystery of the conjunctio, the alchemical union of opposites that births something entirely new. He understood that when this union happens first in the invisible, when 2 souls unite in spirit before they're allowed to fully unite in flesh, the transformation that results is far deeper than if things had happened in the opposite order. Your 5D union is not a consolation prize because things didn't work out in 3D. It is the essential preparation that makes a conscious 3D union possible, if that is what your souls have in store further down the road. Every day you spend united energetically, while physically separate, is healing ancestral trauma, dissolving old karmic contracts, rewiring patterns that would otherwise sabotage love. You are being prepared for a level of intimacy that most people never experience, even if they share a bed for decades, and even if a full physical union never happens in this lifetime. Even if circumstances keep you on separate tracks until the end, the 5D union you have built is eternal. It is not limited by this body, this year, this country, this lifetime. It is something you carry with you through every transition, every chapter change, every doorway beyond this world. This message is also about purpose. Twin flames who experience 5D union are not chosen only for their personal growth. They are chosen to be living examples of a form of love humanity is starving for. We live in an era where love is almost always conditional, transactional, performative, swiped left or right, displayed in posts and stories, measured by how well it fits expectations and social scripts. Relationships are often judged by how convenient, how safe, how impressive they look on the outside. But through your journey, you are proving that there is another way. A way of loving that doesn't need constant validation to stay alive. A way that doesn't require ownership to feel real. A way that doesn't die because there are no guarantees. And that witness doesn't just transform you. It touches everyone who has the privilege of seeing how you move through the world. Friends, family, even strangers who only catch glimpses of your story get to feel, often without having words for it, that there is a different frequency of love available on this planet. Jung understood that some people are called to live lives that are archetypal, where their personal experiences serve a much larger, collective purpose. You may be one of those people. Your journey with your twin flame may feel deeply personal, and it is, but it is also functioning as a kind of tuning fork in the collective field. Through your courage to love beyond conditions, you're helping plant seeds of a new relational consciousness that future generations can grow into more easily. The final aspect of the message is gratitude. Instead of constantly mourning what you don't yet have in the physical, the universe is inviting you to celebrate the miracle of what you already have in the unseen. Think about how many people live and die without ever being truly recognized at the level of the soul. How many go through life playing roles, parent, partner, employee, friend, without ever feeling that someone sees straight through to their essence. You have met someone with whom your soul has remembered itself. That alone is extraordinary. This is not a curse. It is a blessing of the highest order. And the more you are able to recognize that, the more you're able to say thank you for this 5D union. instead of focusing only on the absence of a 3D relationship. The more you align yourself with the frequency where miracles are not only possible, but natural. Gratitude is the vibration that opens doors between dimensions. It's what lets what already exists in 5D find its way, if and when the time is right, into 3D form. But even if it never does in the way your human self imagines, you already hold something no external circumstance can compete with. A connection that is eternal, unbreakable, and sacred. If you felt your own story being spoken in this message, if you felt seen, if something in you exhaled and said, "Yes, that's what I'm living," then there are tools that can help you walk this path with even more awareness and strength. I've created 2 resources specifically for souls undergoing intense transformation through deep connections. The first is 21 Dias de Transformação com Carl Jung. 21 days of guided inner work based on Jung's most powerful techniques for psychic integration and consciousness expansion. Over those 21 days, you'll work with practical exercises to strengthen your ability to operate in higher frequencies, to tell the difference between projection and genuine intuition, and above all, to honor sacred connections without abandoning your own emotional and spiritual sovereignty. The second is the Manual de Sobrevivencia da Alma, the Soul Survival Manual. Because even when you understand the spiritual meaning of 5D union, some days are brutally hard. Days when the physical longing hits like a wave. Days when doubt whispers that you're making it all up. Days when the loneliness feels like too much. This manual offers you grounded strategies, drawn from depth psychology, to make it through those most intense moments without losing your center or your faith in the connection. The links are in the first pinned comment under this video. And now I want to see who truly walked this entire journey with me here. Write in the comments, "My 5D union is sacred and I honor it now." That simple sentence tells me, and more importantly, tells the universe and your own soul, that you're not just a casual listener, but someone deeply committed to your own evolution. Remember, only a very small percentage of twin flames reach a conscious 5D union, not because it's impossible, but because it asks for a kind of surrender and spiritual maturity many people never cultivate. You are here, at this point in the message, because your soul knows you are capable of this. Thank you for having the courage to live a love the world can't easily understand, for daring to trust a truth that goes beyond what your eyes can see, and for allowing your journey to contribute, quietly but powerfully, to the awakening of human consciousness. We'll continue exploring the deeper mysteries of soul connections, always through the lens of Jung's wisdom, in the next video.